Hey, this is CrossFitTracking.com here with a review for the Apple Watch 4 or 5 or even 3 for that matter, but for sleep tracking app AutoSleep. I am making a specific review for this just because I thought it was an incredibly useful app, and it really does bring to life sleep tracking for the Apple, especially the 4 and the 5 versus the 3, and I'll explain why. So with the 3, you have a different optical heart rate sensor on the back of it, and with the 4 and 5, you have a much more accurate, much more effective optical heart rate sensor. So I believe the accuracy of the auto sleep tracking and the sleep tracking in general to be much better with the 4 and the 5 with the better optical heart rate sensor. So what I did is I compared it to the Whoop 3.0, which has one of the industry standards, or at least generally one of the best sleep tracking components to it because of how quickly it takes so much information. And I found it to be very comparable to the results I was getting with the Whoop on the AutoSleep with the Apple Watch 4. When I first set it up, I was using an Apple Watch 3, and I had to continually try to go in and tweak the details to make sure it was accurately tracking the rough period of time that I was asleep and the movement. So you have different ways you can adjust the settings. But ever since using the 4 or the 5 Apple Watch, I found it to be very accurate, for it to be very correct when it calculates when I fell asleep and when I get up. So there's a few basic things that I really liked, and then I'll show you what it looks like on the Apple Watch itself. And if I can get it worked out technology-wise, I'll show you what the app looks like as well. But number one, it calculates the different stages of sleep, and I found that the deep sleep was very accurate when compared to the Whoop. It is a useful dynamic because I think calculating the different stages, especially the amount of deep sleep, shows the amount of recovery. It does have a place in the application where you can see your readiness, your overall health, or your strength and solidity going into a day. A lot of times you could compare that to the Polar system of watches, where it tracks your overall ability to face a strenuous workout that day, but it's got a readiness score, and it's got it in a little meter format, as well as it's got a tracking of when you peaked on your readiness because you had quality sleep for a long period of time, or you troughed in your readiness. Additionally, it's got something neat called a sleep bank, where it shows you're in deficit. You have a sleep deficit of a certain point and a sleep credit of a certain point. So typically through my weeks, I'm burning down all my sleep. I'm going into deeper and deeper debt. And then over the weekend, I get extra recovery, extra sleep, and it gives me additional credit. One of the things that it's interesting about is when you have a deficit, it'll track when you should go to bed in order to, based on your repeated or average wake up times, when you should be going to bed to wipe out some of that debt. It has 2 different modes that you can track it on. So you can track it in more of a detailed graph for different stages of sleep, but you can also just do a rings style where it shows if you had enough of each type of area of sleep and if you filled your rings, similar to the Apple style of calculation and components. But it's one of the things I have had a hard time with the Apple ecosystem, where you have like a million apps and there's not just a few basic widgets other than compilations on the watch itself. But this was one that I found like the data was super useful and worthwhile. And I have not seen that before on an Apple Watch component. So this is the CrossFit tracking review for the Apple Watch 4 and 5, kind of the 3, for the auto sleep mechanism for sleep tracking. So this is the AutoSleep app review. So if you go into the main set of applications, you'll see a little dot here. You can also set it up as a compilation where you can jump right into the quality of your night's sleep. I'm going to make one other mention that I meant to make in the face view, is that when you have significant disturbances in the night that aren't easily trackable, like one night when I had too much to drink at a big neighborhood party, I got 8.5 hours of sleep, but it gave me terrible readiness and terrible sleep quality. So it is accurately picking that up. Whereas other nights I had 6 hours of sleep and I had a much better recovery because it was just quality sleep. So you can see in each of these, you got your rings, the sleep bank. Here's the quality. So the quality was 5 hours and 25. The deep was 1 hour and 57. Average beats per minute. Here's the readiness meter. Now, I like going into the app to see the overall readiness scale. It charts it, But this is very helpful. It actually shows your variances of your waking lowest heart rate. And then you can see your total times here. And it's got some sort of function for lights off, which, you know, I guess it's just to start your sleeping, but I don't really use that. But overall, I found it to be great. I'm not sure if you can get anything. I guess you have the summary. Yeah, so this is just the basic components scrolled down. I think the app itself, the data on the app is much more useful than on the watch. I almost never use the actual app on the watch, but it does a great job tracking. CrossFitTracking.com. This is the AutoSleep app. Hey, this is CrossFitTracking.com. We're just going to go through some of the basics for the AutoSleep app that tracks sleep. In my opinion, the best quality version of the functionality for the Apple Watch 4 and 5. I apologize ahead of time. I have not been using the Apple Watch as a primary testing device, and what I did not realize is that it would not show me as good of a visual representation of the quality of sleep that I was getting in the past. So what you can see here is you can see your history, but unfortunately they summarize just each little day of history when you go back further than a week in just these little blips. So you can, yes, you can see trend lines and you can see details like that, but what I wanted to show you was a larger version of the analysis of the quality of sleep. So you can see, you know, here it shows, you know, went to bed at 12 a.m., got up at 5:38. Here, went to bed at 12:30, got up at 7:46. Here, went to bed at 11:30, got up at 8:19, showing the deep sleep tracking. One of the things you can, you know, track different functional aspects, quality of the sleep, the amount of the sleep, the time in bed, the heart rate monitor, and then the overall rings or sleep rating. So 89%, 99%, 99%. One of the things that was interesting, and it would have shown better if you could see it in this sort of more visual graph at a larger scale, is, you know, every day it would show you a number of components. It would all be found here, where you'd have a monitor for each different component of your sleep. And I most often liked the wellness or the readiness scale, and it would give you sort of a graph that would show you like an energy gauge, which compares to the body battery functionality as well as to Whoop's recovery metrics, as well as Polar Ignite's recovery metrics. And so you would have found that, unfortunately, here on this page, it would be sort of a circular picture and it would show you, but I really do believe that it was tracking in a quality way the heart rate variability alongside a quality tracking of the sleep, as I mentioned in the previous videos. You can see here the only sort of history, and I apologize, it just doesn't give you detailed history, or at least not in the primary versions, more than a week out. But you can see that, you know, Sunday, November 17th, one thing that's interesting about that is that, you know, Saturday, November 16th, and then going into Sunday morning, I actually got reasonable volume of sleep, but was out with friends until late, and so it ended up being a low quality actual sleep experience. Even though the volume or the amount was there, that doesn't really do anything. My readiness was at an all-time low. Typically what would happen is I would start out over the weekend at a high and it would work my way down. This was just one time where one night we were out late with friends. It just ended up being late, and a lot of, you know, food and drink, and even though I slept the right amount of time, it showed that my readiness for a heavy-duty workout or for the day was at a very low level. So unfortunately, and again, I apologize, I like that it did a sleep bank if you had a deficit. So again, I would run a period of a credit, and then I would shrink it down over the course of the week, where I'd run a deficit towards the weekend. Here you can see that I didn't quite make up the deficit very well, partially because I didn't get quality sleep because, you know, I just was... had some things in my system. So again, this is the AutoSleep app. I do think if you're using an Apple Watch, it is by far the best functionality. And because of the quality of the Apple Watch 4 and 5's heart rate tracker that's built into it, I think you can get high quality components for measuring your readiness and your wellness overall. Again, CrossFit Tracking, thanks so much.